What's up, Falcons Nation? It's your boy Jew coming at you with another Atlanta Falcons video. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up. In today's video, I would like to give you guys some quick Atlanta Falcons news. And then I also want to talk about the Atlanta Falcons secondary and will John Hoke, the new secondary coach, be able to turn around this defensive secondary for our Atlanta Falcons. But if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell so you'll know what I've done Atlanta Falcons content. Hit that like button for your boy. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for continuing to tune into the channel. Continuing to share out all my content on all the social media platforms. If you would like to follow your boy on Twitter, you can follow me at Jew Talk Sports. But with that being said, let's jump right into the video. So first off, in Atlanta Falcons news, today the Atlanta Falcons did release kicker Elliott Fry, who is the backup kicker for our Atlanta Falcons. He actually was brought onto the roster last season during the season when Younghoe Koo, I believe he went down with an injury in one of the games. So he had a pulled muscle. And we brought in a guy like Elliott Fry. Like I said, I'm not surprised to see us move on or release a guy like Elliott Fry because Younghoe Koo was a Pro Bowl kicker last year, and he kind of proved that he's one of the best kickers in the league. And I expect Younghoe Koo to possibly get a long-term contract after this season. Younghoe Koo is a guy who came in originally with the Chargers, and then he actually was released by the Chargers, and he went and played in, I believe, the AFL for about a year or so. And then the Atlanta Falcons picked him up, and he was able to come in and basically solidify that role at the starting kicker role. So at this point, I do believe releasing a guy like Elliott Fry, this gives us more space, that gives us one more roster spot that he's not holding up. God forbid if Younghoe Koo goes down with injury, knock on wood, at some point this season, maybe we see a guy like Elliott Fry come back to the team. But I wish him happy trails. But with that being said, let's jump right into the meat and potatoes of the video. And I want to talk about the Atlanta Falcons secondary and will John Hoke, who's the new secondary coach, will he be able to turn around this secondary? Because last season, the Atlanta Falcons had one of the worst pass defense. We had one of the worst secondaries in the league. I believe we ranked 31st or 32nd when it came to yards per game. So that's definitely something that the Atlanta Falcons are going to have to turn around this season. If we expect to be playoff contenders and maybe Super Bowl contenders, we will have to turn around this secondary unit and our defense as a whole. But in this video, I just want to focus mainly on the secondary. If you guys got a chance to watch John Hoke, he had his first media session a couple days ago, and I actually watched that media session, and I was very impressed by John Hoke, who's now the secondary coach of our Atlanta Falcons defense. He talked about a lot of different players that he expect to be able to step up this year. He talked about AJ Terrell being one of those guys that he thought was one of the best defensive backs, one of the best rookie defensive backs last season. He talked about how athletic and instinctual a guy like AJ Terrell is. And he said that he sees AJ Terrell being definitely one of the better corners in the league. He also talked about Isaiah Oliver. I know a lot of people are going to be surprised with hearing his name because early on in the season last year, we were on Isaiah Oliver's tail. I was talking about Isaiah Oliver. Pretty much the whole Atlanta Falcons fan base was killing Isaiah Oliver because he was playing the second corner position opposite side of AJ Terrell. And he got exposed in a couple games last season. One game early in the season, the first game of the season, DK Metcalf beat him on a double move. And it was a lot of games earlier in the first 5 to 6 games when Dan Quinn was still the head coach, where Isaiah Oliver was exposed. He pretty much was placed on the island, which we know that Isaiah Oliver has great short area quickness, but he's not a guy that has great speed or great catch-up speed once he gets beat off the line of scrimmage. He is a solid corner in press man coverage because he does have long arms. He's about 6'2", or 6'1", 6'2", and he has very long arms, and that's what Dan Quinn liked out of his corners. due to him having Richard Sherman and Brandon Browner when he was with the Legion of Boom. When he was coaching the Seattle Seahawks, he liked those longer corners. So that was the reason why Dan Quinn drafted a guy like Isaiah Oliver out of the University of Colorado. But John Hoke, who is the new secondary coach, basically talked about when Isaiah Oliver was moved to that nickel role, he's seen Isaiah Oliver turn the corner, and he believes that Isaiah Oliver could possibly do some things as the nickel cornerback for our team going forward. I do think Isaiah Oliver is going to be the nickel heading into this season, and I think he has the inside path to be the starter at nickel. I definitely think that Isaiah Oliver turned the corner last year after those first 5 games when Dan Quinn was the head coach and we moved to Raheem Morris. Raheem Morris and Jeff Ulbrich decided to move Isaiah Oliver to that nickel position. To me, he did an excellent job on the inside. He was a great tackler, great in out in the middle of the field, great tackling in space. One of the best tackling corners on our team. Other than AJ Terrell, Isaiah Oliver was one of those guys that was flying around. He was like an extra linebacker in the box. And being that he's a bigger cornerback, I do think he can definitely be that like box safety type, one of those corners that can tackle very well, just like a Brian Poole, who we lost a couple years ago. When he was here, he was a great tackler, a great guy in one-on-one situations, coming up and tackling running backs and tight ends. And I think that that's something that Isaiah Oliver really flourished in last season. So I definitely think that Isaiah Oliver is going to shock a lot of people this season. At first, I wasn't the biggest fan of a guy like Isaiah Oliver originally playing that outside corner position because I knew he didn't have the speed where if he was beat off the line or if he missed his jam, he wasn't going to be able to, run down the field and catch up to wide receivers. And another thing that Isaiah Oliver really struggled with was finding the football, being able to turn his head around and look for the football. He was a guy that face guarded a lot. So he was getting early on in the season a lot of penalties because he didn't understand that he needed to look back for the football. So I definitely think playing that nickel role fit him better because you're mainly mirroring the receiver and you're kind of facing the quarterback. Being that we played a lot of cover 3, a lot of zone defense, he could watch the eyes of the quarterback. And he was great in coming up and making tackles in space. And that's what you need out of your nickel cornerback, especially in zone principles. You need a guy that's a solid tackler and a sure tackler. So I definitely think Isaiah Oliver is going to be one of those guys in this secondary unit at that nickel role that can definitely be a guy that continues to improve. Another thing that John Hope talked about in this media session was being able to bring pressure from everywhere. He talked about the reason he came back and wanted to coach under a guy like Dean Pease was that Dean Pease is a guy that likes to blitz from all over the field. And he feels like that's going to be something that's going to help out this young secondary. And he also talked about everything starts with affecting the quarterback. And I completely agree with Coach Hoke talking about affecting quarterbacks' rhythm, affecting quarterbacks and making them uncomfortable in the pocket. I feel like the last couple seasons when we had Dan Quinn here, we didn't do a good job of attacking quarterbacks, disguising things, giving quarterbacks different looks to try to confuse them. We mainly just dropped back in our cover 3, soft shell coverage, and we allow quarterbacks to get comfortable in the pocket. We allow quarterbacks to get into rhythm and pick us apart slowly but surely. They basically, killed our Atlanta Falcons with basically short quick passes that we were just giving them in the flats and things of that nature. And we died basically by 1,000 paper cuts. So we definitely have to be better this season. And I definitely think that our secondary is going to improve because we're going to bring pressure. We're going to get these quarterbacks off their spot. We're going to get them, make them uncomfortable. And once you make a quarterback uncomfortable, that's when they make mistakes. That's when they, try to run with the football and don't see a strip sack fumble coming. That's when they rush a pass. And, when you're disguising a coverage and they end up throwing a pick six and things of that nature because you have them, you throw off their timing. And I feel like that's a huge deal when you bring in the blitz. The main thing when you bring in blitz is not always to get home, because a lot of the times nowadays, because a lot of offenses are quick West Coast offenses where they're getting the ball out fast. One thing that you may be able to do is you may be able to bat a ball and get an interception when you're bringing the blitz, or you may throw off the timing where the quarterback has to throw the ball early. The ball has to come out now, where the quarterback doesn't have time to let that receiver break open, or he doesn't have the time, to take that 3-step drop, let that back foot hit, and let the ball go. So I really think that bringing pressure is going to be key, and bringing pressure from different positions on the field. I really think that that's going to be key as well. We seen last season. I went back and watched the first game where we faced the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. When they came to Atlanta, we were up 17-0 at halftime. And over the weekend, I rewatched that game from last season. And one thing that I noticed was early on in that first half, when we were up 17-0, we did a good job. Coach Raheem Morris and Jeff Ulbrich did a good job of scheming up blitzes, bringing those zone pressures from different areas of the field. Our safety was able to come away with a sack in that game. Sherrod Niesman, he was able to come on a safety blitz and sack Tom Brady in that game. Also, Keanu Neal was able to get pressure and force a couple incomplete passes where Brady had to get rid of the ball early. And then also Deion Jones came away with a sack in that game as well. So I think we did a good job earlier on in that game of bringing pressure and, making Tom Brady uncomfortable. But in the second half of that game, the Atlanta Falcons went away from what was working. Raheem Morris and Jeff Ulbrich went back into that cover 3 soft zone. And that's what got Tom Brady and that offense back into the game. He got into a rhythm and he was able to pick apart our zone defense. So I really think that a guy like John Hoke and Dean Pease, because he's so unpredictable, because teams are not going to know what we're going to throw at them from game to game, because we're going to be 3-4, 4-3 hybrid, multiple fronts. I really feel like bringing that showing that exotic coverage and showing those exotic blitzes to quarterbacks is going to confuse them. And I really think that that's going to help our secondary, because quarterbacks, when they come to the line, they're not going to know who's their hot read. A lot of the times, if you watch players like Matt Ryan, Tom Brady, when they come to the line and they're making their checks, what they're looking for is what defense are they in and who's my hot read, my hot route. So if this ball has to come out quick, if they bring a blitz, I know exactly where I need to go with the football. Or if they don't come with a blitz, which our Atlanta Falcons didn't blitz a whole lot last season. When we sat back in our cover 3, great quarterbacks that have, that are cerebral, like Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, guys who's been around the league, they understand where their hot reads are. They understand what players are going to be available right away. And kind of an example of that, is if you go back to the Super Bowl. Tom Brady basically realized in that second half, when we dropped back into that cover 3, they threw a lot of passes to the running back in the flats out to James White. And the reason they were able to do that is because they realized that the Atlanta Falcons were going to stay in that cover 3 soft zone coverage. And he basically took what the defense was giving him. Another good example of it was, I believe, 2 years ago when we faced Marcus Mariota and the Tennessee Titans. Marcus Mariota picked our cover 3 apart the whole game. And he was actually struggling that season, ended up losing his job later on that season to Ryan Tannehill. But in that game, we made Marcus Mariota look like a Hall of Famer. He was able to pick apart that soft defense because we didn't bring pressure. We sat back and allowed him to get comfortable. And once he got into a rhythm, he was able to dominate our defense. So I really think with Dean Pease, with John Hoke, and, them bringing in this exotic, blitzing from all over the place, it's going to make quarterbacks uncomfortable. It's going to cause a lot of the young quarterbacks to make mistakes, and it's even going to cause the veteran quarterbacks to make mistakes as well. But definitely the younger quarterbacks, like these guys that are coming in their first season, the kid from BYU that we faced the Jets this year, he's going to have his hands full with our Atlanta Falcons defense. And I always forget this kid's name, but the guy at BYU, you guys know who I'm talking about, that plays for the Jets. I feel like he's going to have his hands full when they face the Atlanta Falcons this year. And a lot of these quarterbacks that have been used to playing the Atlanta Falcons in that cover three, soft zone shell, they're going to struggle with us this year because they're not going to know what to expect. We're going to throw a lot of different things at them, and I really feel like that's been one of the Achilles heels of our Atlanta Falcons is we didn't do a good job of making adjustments over the last couple seasons. Dan Quinn, Raheem Morris, Jeff Ulbrich, they didn't do a good job of making adjustments, and that's the reason why we lost a lot of big leads that we had, whether it was the Super Bowl or whether it was last season where we lost 7 or 8 games by one possession. That's because teams knew what to do against us. In that final drive against the Detroit Lions, when we faced Matthew Stafford and he threw that touchdown on the last play of the game, we were playing a zone coverage. And that's how he was able to throw that touchdown in the end zone. Basically, I believe it was his tight end who caught the ball across the middle on like a slant pattern. And that's because we were sitting back in that cover 3, that soft zone, and they were able to drive right down the field with a couple seconds left in the game and beat us. So I really think with this being said, that our defense is going to improve. I definitely think that with us, throwing a lot of different coverages and doing a lot of different new things, I really feel like our Atlanta Falcons defense and this secondary is going to take a step forward. I'm looking forward to this new coaching staff, John Hope. I loved hearing him talk about the secondary and what he thought about certain players in this secondary. But I really think that we're going to make a big jump in the secondary as far as turnovers, getting interceptions. He talked about us being a defense that looks to force turnovers, and that was the reason they drafted a guy like Richie Grant, who's a guy who can take the football away, who had over 10 interceptions in college. Another guy they brought in, Darren Hall, out of the University of San Diego State. He was another guy that had a ton of interceptions. I believe he also had about 10 interceptions and 3 forced fumbles. So those are 2 guys that they brought in that were ball hawks. And he talked about those guys being added to the secondary to be guys that takes the ball away. AJ Terrell is another guy who, if you start to blitz, he's a guy that's opportunistic. He's a guy that loves to, bait routes and things of that nature. We've seen it against the Minnesota Vikings and Kirk Cousins, where he jumped the route and was able to get an interception. I expect him to have to take a step forward and have a lot more interceptions this year and force turnovers. But with that being said, this being your boy Jew, you let me know what you think of the video. I'm going to have a lot more content coming for you guys as well. Tomorrow, the NFL schedules will drop tomorrow evening, I believe at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you guys tune in for that. I'm definitely going to be interested to see how this NFL schedule shakes out. But with that being said, this being your boy Jew. If you like my content, please hit that subscribe button. If you haven't already hit that subscribe button, I really appreciate you guys continuing to tune into the channel and support your boy. Also, go over to Atlanta Falcons Nation and hit that subscribe button there as well. But with that being said, I'll holler at you guys in the next video. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up. Peace.